Because actually the one thing about Trump is he's dominated the media for the last 40 years, whatever the medium was. And Kurt, I feel like one of the reasons we were so excited to talk to you, and there are many, you coined the term short-fingered Vulgarian about Trump when you were at Spy. And really, you sort of foreshadowed what was to come. So it might be your fault.
Short-fingered Vulgarian was coined collectively by Graydon Carter, my co-founder, and I, and God knows who else in our staff at the time. And he was the first person, having done a profile of Donald Trump before any of us ever knew who Trump was in 1983. We were just starting to talk about Spy. As he said, he has cufflinks the size of $50, which is he used as a signifier of being from Queens, basically. But he said he had small hands. And so when we began inventing an epithet for him, as we did for frequent recurring people in Spy, like maybe my favorite, even though it doesn't have the legacy of short-fingered Vulgarian, was our one for Henry Kissinger, whom we always called, every time we referred to him in the magazine, socialite war criminal Henry Kissinger.
That's great.
And I just love that. Anyway,
So the juxtaposition of it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And they were
socialite
always
war
these,
criminal.
Like, Whatever they were, 5-6 syllable, like Homeric epithets. And so Trump we called for a while Queens-born casino operator, thinking he'll hate that. But then we came up finally with short-fingered Vulgarian, and it stuck, and
And the rest is history.
became the 10th line of my obituary. So we did invent this, and it stuck, and it outlasted the magazine and everything else. But moreover, one reason we invented this epithet, this phrase, is because he was a great recurring figure. If you're starting a satirical magazine in New York City in 1986, like, oh my God, he was in the first issue. The cover story of the first issue was Jerks, the 10 most embarrassing New Yorkers.
And he was
there. And again, I go back and look at how we quoted him and what we said about him, and it's just, he is the same creature.
Yes, I mean, well, he does want to bring back Alcatraz, like we are talking, and he has not emotionally aged since the 1980s. So this is it's very on brand for us to be talking about him circa 1980.
He is an artifact of that time.
I would say that growing up in Canada, as I did growing up in Toronto, I religiously read Spy magazine, and I think that my opinion of Donald Trump was formed through your vision of him. If that makes any sense, because I've always known, like, why would a teenager in Toronto know anything about a Donald Trump? I mean, the fact is,
and not just about Canadians, but other people.
Yes.
I grew up in Nebraska, the Canada of America, effectively. And many people, especially your age, slightly younger than we are, say, like, it's just exactly that kind of thing.
Right.
Well, that's how I know about Mike Ovitz. That's how I know about
Donald
Trump. That's how I know about, Elaine's, whatever it is.
Well, yes, it was very big. It taught me a lot about New York society, New York culture that I really had no right to know about.
Yeah.
Spy magazine and Gourmet magazine are my two touch points.
And it talks about them in a non-reverent way, which was the first time, because otherwise these people have been sort of, people were worshipful of them, and you sort of pulled the curtain back. And I remember reading the first copy of Spy when I was working at the Daily Telegraph in London, and I actually wrote a piece about it. And I can remember my first line, which was Britain is coming under attack from across the Atlantic again. And there was a piece in it about why you shouldn't have British people to stay, because they would arrive and they'd say, oh, I've forgotten my toothbrush. And then you as a host would say, well, there's a CVS on the corner. And they go, no, I'm only here for 2 weeks. It's fine. Which was such a good description of British people.
Yeah. Well, as having a Canadian co-founder who was half, an Anglophilic Canadian co-founder.
Right.
We were attuned to Britishness. And I remember, yes, that piece had the word freeloaders in the...
Yeah, totally. It was such a good piece, and it was called enormous Sturm and Drang in London, I remember at the time. And of course, you can read all about this in Graydon Carter's memoir, which came out about a month ago. I'm halfway through and really enjoying, and the stuff about Spy is great. But when you look at Donald Trump now, is it an inevitability of what happened? Is it the mashup of celebrity culture, or what is it that sort of got him there that you somehow managed to skewer back in the 80s?
Well, in addition to investigating his imminent bankruptcy and as you say, reporting on him not like, wow, look at him, he's great, he's wonderful, look, he's built these buildings. We did what journalists we thought were supposed to do, which is to be adversarial and look at and talk about him and people like him in general in the way that the young journalists we were and hung out with would at the bar. Like say these things like why can't that go in the paper? Why can't that go in the and just sit, fact check it and make it rigorous and do journalism in a funny pseudo British way about these bad guys like Donald Trump. And he was all the things he is now: a bully, a braggart, a liar,
show off,
all that, and that was something new in America, and that was something new about him. It was also a moment when tabloid journalism, certainly in at large in America, but specifically in New York with the Daily News, the New York Post was a thing for the first time in the 70s and 80s, so that was new, and that was a perfect timing for him to be able to call up the New York Post and Daily News and said, "Hey, do this. My wife said it was the best, or my girlfriend, best sex she's ever had," or whatever he wanted to do to get in the papers. And
I know, because of course he used to ring up with stories about himself.
Yes. Well, but he did that and pretended to be somebody else. But he didn't. He just talked to people as Donald Trump to get to play stories. He would call Page Six, the gossip column, for all the time, and so his accessibility helped. His shamelessness, I'll do anything, and the fact that, like P.T. Barnum, his great predecessor, he who coined the phrase, well, the greatest show on earth, and there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Right.
Donald Trump, the key to Donald Trump, and he understood that from the get-go. And as politics was becoming more and more a kind of subset of show business in the end of the 20th century, he got that. And then his moment came, and here he was.